Welcome back to GrokTALK. My name is Steve McDonald. I'm here with Skip Murphy and Mike Rogers. Coming to you from Concord, New Hampshire at the CNHT offices. Visit cnht.org. Yeah. Get some tickets to their picnic next week.
Yes. Where is it being held?
In Hillsborough.
At
the VFW.
Which is just on the west side of town, on the main road out.
Go to cnht.org. They have complete directions.
And the time.
Time starts at noon, I think.
Earlier than that.
Noon to 4.
That was earlier than that.
No, we'll be there earlier than that.
Oh, you bet. I just hope the door's unlocked.
Well, we can talk to
Jane,
of course, and then Ed, and somebody else. I can't remember who. I'm having a Tom Flaherty, major organizational force on this particular year's event.
You haven't shaved in a while, have you?
No, I haven't.
I can see that on the live stream.
Yep, thank you. I haven't shaved. I'm actually supposed to do a razor commercial in a couple of days, and I'm letting it grow out.
Cool.
I thought maybe you were putting in some mosquito defenses.
No, that doesn't work. They bite you right through the hair. Kind of like the government. Doesn't matter what kind of protections you put up, they come and get you. Hey, JR, how you doing?
Good morning.
Hi. Just sit and listen to us banter away. Welcome to GrokTALK.
So I was reading about Representative Valancourt's post on NH Insider about the gas tax that starts Tuesday next week.
Tuesday gas tax day.
Yeah. Elections have consequences, part 2.
Yep. So get your cans and go down and get your gas this weekend because it's going up.
Fill up your lawnmower cans, fill up your cars.
Yeah, and the feds are talking about another raise in the gas tax as well.
I have to add here. I was reading about one of the Congress critters that supported this. You've got to understand the Orwellian mentality here. It's maintaining the purchasing power of the Federal Highway Trust Fund. That's what it's about. You can't make this stuff up.
That's why we created a government. That's why.
Because they can make this stuff up, because they're Orwellian.
So, JR, we got gas tax, and then there was something else. You called for something to happen this week.
Oh, yeah. So let's talk about SB 319.
Let's do that.
That's the other thing that needs to be brought up. And Governor Hassan's quote-unquote narrowly tailored argument that that's why this bill should stand on its own. If I understand correctly, she's an attorney and has gone to law school. One would think she's competent in reading a Supreme Court decision. I'm just one of these lowly engineers who reads it at 10 o'clock on a Friday night. But reading through the decision, it's clear that narrowly tailored isn't exactly what our bill does. In fact, I don't think it meets not only constitutional muster, it meets none of the requirements of good legislation, which is there a demonstrated need? 1. 2, is it enforceable? 3, is it on the books? And then the 4th being the Constitution. I don't think it meets any one of those requirements.
And this is the 25-foot buffer zone around
female
healthcare clinics in New Hampshire.
Right.
And, of course, the Supreme Court just ruled that the 35-foot buffer zone in Massachusetts was unconstitutional. And you have called for Terry Norelli, the current soon-to-be retired Speaker of the House, to bring the House back in session to deal with our now unconstitutional bill.
Correct. And 2 representatives have pointed out that the title of that request should have not been special session, but should have been a return to session, and they are correct. A special session is what the governor has to call, and I'm willing to call on the governor to call a special session, because clearly the bill that she signed 3 weeks ago is unconstitutional. There's no demonstrated need. There are laws on the books already to deal with people if they're acting violently, and criminally threatening those entering these clinics. And it's not necessarily enforceable because our bill is up to 25 feet. Well, it's up to 25 feet, 24 feet, 9 inches. Oh. How does the person know, right? Well, it gives complete discretion to the clinic to set that border, which is unlike the Massachusetts one, which was 35 feet, which was a fixed standard. At least someone could go chalk the sidewalk and figure out where the 35-foot mark was.
Oh, please, don't start with the chalking, because then we end up in Keene.
I think we should chalk the sidewalks, personally, and this may go too far, I think we should chalk the sidewalks. Where is 25 feet? Or is it 24 on this one?
Can we chalk an outline of a baby on the sidewalk outside the door?
I think that...
Here we go. Well, here's the deal. I look at it, and we've talked about constitutional values, especially in the first two segments, JR, that it is everybody's duty, everybody's job, whether you are elected or not, to always to be constitutionally mindful of what our governing values should be. And obviously we have lots of people, especially on the left, but a few on the right, that could care less what our limiting values should be. So with that dispense, though, I'm going to throw another thing into the mix here today. Those are supposed to be absolute values, but we see that people have just weakened them to the point of forgetting about them. But here's the deal. If you are being mindful of the Constitution, you have not just imbibed but internalized those values. And when you look at things, you immediately flash before you those values before you go on and do anything further. And I've put up a post talking about that our legislators who are creating additional law should be looking at those values and say, I should not be crossing that boundary. They are supposed to limit us, and we don't see that it's going. But we've also seen the change in the culture going from a Judeo-Christian where the internal values were always much more important than the external values. That we had internal governance, the little devil or the little angel on your shoulder that's saying, yes, you can do this, no, you shouldn't do that. Progressives being more atheistic than not, saying, well, people can't control themselves, so we have to do that external governance, sort of like bars around the cage, and that's how they view laws. And that if you don't write a law for every single scenario, somebody's going to slip between those bars, just like Al Gore did when he got all of that money during his presidential campaign a few years ago, when he said, well, why shouldn't I be able to collect all that money from these monks that have gone and pleaded to be poor? There's no governing agency.
There's no controlling legal authority.
Yes, thank you. And so that's how they view things. And I think Hassan and the Democrats are saying the higher value is the ability to kill babies, so we're going to stick bars around it so that you can't cross it.
Well, and unfortunately, if there's anything narrowly tailored, it's their viewpoint, which is rather extreme.
So that's actually a good description of them. Their viewpoints are narrowly tailored, but their laws are very broadly drawn, so they can be anything they want them to be, nothing more and nothing less.
And I'm going to quote from this opinion because I would encourage people go out and read it. It's available. It's 40 pages long or so, and it's worth just seeing what the Supreme Court justices had to say. To meet the requirement of narrowly tailoring, the government must demonstrate that alternative measures that burden substantially less speech would fail to achieve the government's interest, not simply choose the route that is easier. A painted line on the sidewalk is easy to enforce, but the prime objective of the First Amendment is not efficiency. Okay? Basically, they go on and talk about the fact that at the end of the day, just because it's convenient to do this, unless the state has demonstrated they've tried every other alternative, this is not an enforceable law. It's wrong. It's a violation of our First Amendment rights. And they spend a lot of time in this opinion talking about the fact that leafleting and handing out pamphlets was critical to the First Amendment and the founding of our country. And that's exactly the type of speech not the protesters do, but there's a group of people who are there basically as sidewalk counselors who, hey, can I help you? Is there anything you need? And aren't willing to hand out literature and pamphlets. These are not people holding signs and threatening those entering the clinic. In fact, it's on the opposite end of the spectrum. They're there as friends to try and build relationships. They're not intimidating or coercing anybody.
Wasn't this all because Nancy Stiles had Republican in the New Hampshire State Senate, said one person came to her and said, I have been assaulted. So once again we see the progressive mantra, progressivism is, can cross the aisles no problem, but in the essence of trying to do something, we must do something. Once again we see all too willingly elected officials willing to punish everyone for the actions of just one or just a few. I mean, how outrageous does this get? At what point do we say we're supposed to be a mature society? Why can't we have mature consequences for those that actually do wrong instead of punishing everybody?
Criminal threatening is on the books, right?
Yes.
If there are issues at any one particular women's health center, and that's their term for these, and I guess I should use that in quotes, right? And it's a part of the Supreme Court ruling, right? There was, on Saturday mornings at the Boston Women's Clinic, okay, there was larger than normal crowds, and it impeded access. All they'd have to do is have the police say, you know what, folks, move along, we need a little bit more room, people need to be able to enter the clinic, okay? But instead, the Massachusetts legislature, and Scott Brown was the one who pushed this while he was there. Might I remind people that he is very anti-life. Came out and wrote a letter actually asking Speaker of the Massachusetts legislature, co-signed by a bunch of others, to go ahead and push this bill forward. They came out and came up with a law that affected every women's clinic in the state, and there are a number of other clinics that have no issues. So this is the difference between narrowly tailored and a broad bill. This is a broad bill. The one in New Hampshire is a broad bill. And Governor Hassan should have known that as an attorney.
So a couple of points. First of all, on Scott Brown and his old 60-40, 60% anti-life and claims to be 40% pro-life, because when he ran in 2012 and tried to claim to be all things to all people, he ran ads saying he was pro-choice, meanwhile taking endorsements from pro-life groups, which is incredible. The other thing I want to point out is who benefits here? Because if adoption agencies and alternative programs successfully get these young ladies to choose a less traumatic way to deal with their pregnancy, they are taking money out of the mouths of not babes, but the evil broads that run NARAL and Planned Parenthood.
Right.
So that was more a statement than a question.
More a statement, isn't this another case of follow the money, JR, where essentially
it's a what you believe, yes. Yes, I believe that those who pushed this bill, those who sponsored it, were acting in the political interests of those who benefit financially from the abortion clinics.
All right, we're going to take 60 seconds, JR. Stay on the line. We'll be right back.
Steve McDonald here. Ever notice how some Democrats get all worked up about photo ID? No, not the ID you use to access all those government services like unemployment, Social Security, welfare, and even Obamacare. I'm talking about photo ID to vote, and I don't think it's the photo part. Democrats love photos. President Obama's got a real nice one of himself with the pretty blonde Danish prime minister that he took while his wife Michelle was sitting right next to him scowling. So if it's not the photo, it must be the ID. But the only reason to object to the ID would be if you were either not who you said you were, or you didn't live where you said you lived, which might explain why some Democrats get so upset when you ask for one. I say some Democrats because a recent poll in New Hampshire reported that almost 60% of registered Democrats and 75% of all registered voters thought voter ID was a good idea. So if it's not the New Hampshire residents, or even Democrats who oppose voter ID, it must be the kind that can't get elected unless they can get people to vote in your town who have no business voting there. I'm Steve McDonald for GrokTALK, and we'll keep shining the light on them for you.
We are back with J.R. Hole, who is on the line, to enjoy our company and ours his, to discuss issues of the day.
One more prod for the racetrack here?
Sure. Tonight, 7 o'clock. Loudon, New Hampshire Motor Speedway. Marilyn de Garcia's campaign is having a race to Congress event. There will be barbecue. There will be pace car. You can sit in pace car and go around the track. There'll be all kinds of good stuff going on. And we are giving away 2 VIP passes. We'll put your name on the list if you want to go. Something's humming. It must be your phone. Okay. I can feel that all the way over here. What a great table, huh? So if you want to go, give us a call at 603-715-9689. We're just giving them away. We'll call up the campaign and put your name on the list if you're interested. I know most of our listeners are probably outdoors and will listen to the program later, which doesn't do us any good in this circumstance. But we're trying to give them away, and if you want to go, let us know.
Well, and alternatively, you could ask him to post pithy comments under the article announcing this giveaway.
You could do that. You can email Steve at grok.com, and we'll be happy to take care of that. So, JR, you want to go?
Sure. I would love to go.
Okay.
I have one question, which is the value of the tickets, only as I'm a state rep. If it crosses over $25, I'm prohibited.
Oh, you are then, because the campaign donation to her campaign for the tickets is $100.
Yeah, that's what I figured. I just saw your post online. I'm like, oh, I would love to go, but I think I'm probably excluded based on what I perceive the value of these tickets to be.
Yeah, even the $35 for the... Unless you go as a kid, that's $15.
You got plenty of those.
Yeah. Holy cow, an ethical representative, folks.
So there you go. He's excluded because of money. Okay.
Yes. Well, speaking of excluded from money, right? We recently had our governor who went on a junket to Turkey. You may have talked about this last week. I'm not sure.
We bring it up every now and again.
Jetted off for a little Turkish delight. Yeah.
Only a week after she signed some sort of
travel
requirement.
ban. Yep.
Yeah, that said there's no travel bans. Right. She sent a notice to all of the agencies in the state saying there's no more travel out of state. She decides to travel out of the country. I'm not sure I agree with that. I mean, yes, she may be trying to bring businesses here from Turkey. I'm not necessarily sure that New Hampshire is the ideal destination right now, given our business climate having dropped to 32nd or something, 30th by one standard and 32nd by another in terms of business friendliness. Turkey's going to be looking at New Hampshire to move businesses to. Instead of going across the world to go find a business, why don't we fix New Hampshire and bring businesses back by making us more business friendly?
Well, maybe she's thinking that by in limiting our speech rights and our property rights, that we're getting to be more like Turkey, and they might like it here.
So I got to ask the other statement. The other question here is, what's the nationality of Mr. Hassan? It wouldn't be Turkish, would it?
I don't know.
We should check.
But I do know that he has a rather nice tax-free home, right? Isn't he the president or principal or something?
Headmaster.
Headmaster, there's the right term, over at Phillips Exeter, so they live in a $500,000 home tax-free.
Right, and they have a good deal over there.
Yeah, and we talked about that a lot during the election campaign last time
Well,
around.
but she's coming back around for election, and people got to be reminded that what is good for everybody else is not necessarily good for her. Right?
And that's the problem, because we see this divide between or from the ruling class to those of us who have to bear the brunt of what the ruling class decides. And we see this most often in Washington, where all kinds of rules are created. You know, we talked about that. We see mostly senators that have been in the Obama administration, along with academicians, versus governors who actually have to do things, those who speak flowery language versus those who have to take on the hard details of actual governance. And, you know, we see people who are fairly well off here in New Hampshire who are able to run one way or the other for high elected office, but they pass the laws that the rest of us have to go on, and we can see the assumptions that, oh, well, this won't be too bad. It's only a cup of coffee a day. But the problem is that even on my lowly budget committee, we had so many people coming through saying, here's my pet idea. It's only going to cost each family a cup of coffee a day. By the end of the term that I had, I was towing a couple coffee trucks behind my car because everybody wants a cup of coffee, and they don't understand that those cup of coffees add up.
They do add up. And a cup of coffee is a good analogy because we used that back when HB1 and HB2 were passing last spring, right, when we passed the budget for the biennium. The budget was so closely, the margin between what was actually raised and what was going to be spent was so close. And I want to say it was $80,000 on our budget. It was something insignificant, right? It amounted to the ability of the average family to judge their spending and their income for an entire 2-year period to the difference in the price of coffee between a medium and a large on one day. That's how close the budget was put together, right? Are we going to be able to know every cup of coffee and the size of it for the next 2 years that we're going to buy? Because if you make the mistake and you buy one extra large instead of a large, or buy a large instead of a medium, you've broken the budget. No one should budget that close.
And the problem is that, again, this will be the second time I brought it up, but under Bastiat's broken window theory, where government is the one that benefits by taking away from those that actually do the producing. Why is it that government is always being put first? Well, we have to resupply this, we have to do this, we have to keep the spending levels up, or the ability to spend up. And very few people talk about the families that are supplying all of the funding for this. Mm-hmm. Government seems to be coming first, and not the families first. Why is this, and what can we do about it?
Right. And there are families that are hurting, that can't put together the extra $20 this year for anything. That's beyond their ability in their budget, and they monitor their budgets at that level. They just can't randomly go out to, I don't know, a fast food restaurant one evening and say, yeah, we're just going to do that this month. They don't have it. Yet we're expecting them to chip in the extra couple dollars every week for gasoline now for the year, so that they can drive to work and earn a living. That's unreasonable. Our current legislature, combined with the governor, have taken us from being a more proactive, business-friendly state during the 2011-2012 time period to being something that is very unbusiness-friendly, and it's going to hurt us for a while. And we've got to turn around, and as Representative Valancourt said, elections have consequences, and we're living some of those consequences now. To make us a more business-friendly state, to bring more jobs back, to make the wages rise, we're going to have to be proactive about that next session.
And the problem is, it isn't just the Democrats, because as we've been railing about at Granite Rock, we see the rogue Republicans, premost New Hampshire State Senators Chuck Morse, Jeb Bradley, Nancy Stiles, Bob Odell, Dave Booten, and Reagan, or Roush actually. They're voting in ways that run counter to the Republican platform, and voting more as they were on Democrats. Now they'll say, well, look at all the other stuff we did. Yeah, but this is the stuff that's expensive. It's sort of like the Obama on the executive orders. Well, all these other presidents have passed more executive orders. Yeah, but not the scale and the cost that you have.
Right.
And what's with these nitwits?
At the end of the day, it's because they believe they're doing the right thing. But there's some delusional thinking there, because I've actually heard some of those say, well, I'm a fiscal conservative. A fiscal conservative would not be supporting the expanded Medicaid program. A fiscal conservative would not be out pushing a gasoline tax. Those are not fiscally conservative measures. If there's inadequate funds in the roads and bridges fund, and I agree that there is, why don't we stop stealing from the fund? Fix the leaky bucket before you do anything else, right? When 30% of it's being pulled off the top to fund other agencies, go fix that. Had we fixed that a long time ago, we wouldn't have the problem.
So why aren't these people strong enough in their principles to say, we will take on the hard decisions?
It's a good question, Skip. Unfortunately, I don't have an answer. Very few people are willing to buck the trend and actually vote their principles all the time when they're in the State House.
Is it a case of not willing to defend the principles, or more willing to defend their butts in those particular seats?
It could be. It could be both. I mean, it could be the latter. I honestly think at the end of the day, it's hard to be someone who stands up and says, no, I made a commitment, I'm going to keep the commitment. I know that's going to put some pressure on other senators, but this is not a social organization, and I'm not necessarily up here to always maintain and to make it easy for my fellow senators. I'm going to do what I committed to, and that's what we need people to do. Those are statesmen. Those are people of principle.
You know, we do this all day long. We walk the talk, every single one of us, in our private lives as to what we put on Granite Rock. I wish I could run, to be honest with you, JR, because frankly, I'm almost locked into my beliefs, because anybody who would question what I would try to do would only have to look at Granite Rock and the 8,000 posts that I've done and going, why are you acting and voting and writing legislation counter to what you've written on the blog site? So there's my internal governance. I've already laid it out there. But I can't run, unfortunately. But how do we get people to say, if I believe in this, how do we get them to act that way?
So there are people. There even are a couple down in Congress, not many. Rand Paul comes to mind. Ron Paul, definitely. Someone who had a career of 24 years in Congress, who the worst thing they could go find him for in terms of inconsistency was some letters from 25 years ago. There are people like that. They're rare, but when we find them, it really behooves us to go support them, to keep them there, because they become kind of the flashlight on the inside to expose some of the cronyism and some of the misdeeds, such that we can clean it up. Kind of like sunlight is a great antiseptic. That's what happens, is if you can find a couple of those people and put them in, all of a sudden a lot of the problems that are within government come to light.
Hey, you know what? We're running to the end of the segment. We got about a minute. Not quite. So, if you would like anybody to reach out to you, constituent or otherwise, how would they do so?
My website's under construction again, but we will keep a copy of the old one laying around as PDFs or something, so no one ever, as Skip said, right, what did you promise? Well, I'm keeping the same information that was published in 2010 when I ran the first time, because I think it's important. I think people need to understand what I committed to when I ran the first time and won. So we will keep that around, but the website, jrhole.com, is under construction, but there's a way to donate at that page, and within a week or two we'll have it back up and running, so you can see a refined website for this election.
And let's spell that out for the folks that aren't totally familiar, jrhole.com.
Great. Thank you, Michael.
All right, Jared, thanks for taking 30 minutes and hanging out with us here at Granite Rock.
Welcome.
Blah, blah, blah. You have a great weekend.
You too. Bye-bye.
Okay, we'll see you. That is this week's program. I am Steve McDonald here with Mike Rogers and Skip Murphy. And next week we will be live from the, hopefully, all things considered, maybe not, but we're going to try to be live from the CNHT Family Picnic. And then the week after that we got another bunch of guests already booked up, and hopefully you'll tune in and have a listen.
Yeah, that's homecoming day for conservatives.
Right. All right, cnht.org. We'll be back next week. You guys all have a great weekend.
GrokTV.